Hello, everyone, and welcome to another one of our financial wellness webinars. Today, we're going to be doing a shorter form. It should only be about 10 minutes, and it's going to be an update on Social Security for 2026. So, we do multiple webinars throughout the year. We do longer form webinars where we go over specific topics. We bring in professionals from other industries, including estate planning. We brought in partners at local estate planning firms. We've done end of life planning with the owner of a multi generational funeral home. And we've done cybersecurity with the head of technology for a major law firm in the area. So we have multiple different financial topics. All of those are recorded and available on our website. And this will also be recorded and available on our website as well. But we're trying to do some of these shorter form ones that are just more time sensitive to things going on in the world today. So today's focus is going to be on Social Security, what's changing, and really what are some of the major concerns I'm hearing from clients and how are we addressing those. So to start, just a few different changes we'll go over. The benefit is increasing as part of cost of living. The taxes being paid into it are increasing. The full retirement age is now formalized at 67. And then there's been a few other policy changes that are impacting how long the trust fund will last. So first I wanted to go over here just the Social Security benefit. So every year it receives a cost of living adjustment. In years when there's been particularly high inflation, there has been high adjustments to the COLA adjustment Social Security. So if we look back in 2022, for instance, in 2023, there were some significant increases that has dropped quite a bit recently. On this slide here, we're showing the average retiree receives $50 to $60 more per month. I will say, unfortunately, I've seen this go the other direction, where Medicare premiums have increased faster than the cost of living. So you get a letter from Social Security letting you know that your benefit is increasing with cost of living adjustment, and then you also receive a letter for your Medicare premiums are going up, and you end up seeing a slight reduction in benefit, which can be painful. One of the ways that Social Security, well, the way that Social Security is funded is through payroll taxes, your FICA taxes or self-employment taxes. And right now, there is a cap on how much of your income is taxable for Social Security. And so that cap was $176,000. For 2026, it's going to $184,500. Meaning, if someone makes $1 million in a year, wouldn't that be wonderful? Make $1 million, you only pay tax on $184,500. If you make less than that, then every dollar you make, you are paying tax on. Now, we'll touch on this later. There's also some arguments to be made for removing that cap altogether and what impact that would have on Social Security, and I will touch on that soon. But this is something where we are seeing an increase in how much money is being paid into Social Security as a result. Another major thing is full retirement age is now 67 for anyone born in 1960 or later. So for many of you, you found your parents or your grandparents, depending on your age, started collecting at 65. As recognition that people were living longer and that Social Security was paying out more, that full retirement age shifted from 65 to 67. And that was not done overnight, not done with a wave of a wand. It was really for about 20-year increments. They were slowly moving people from 65 to 67 with a recognition that if someone is already retired or approaching retirement, you can't pull the rug out from under them and have them figure out how to replace these benefits. So there are many people that may be watching this or know people who their full retirement age was 66 in some set number of months, right? 66 in 2 months. That was part of the phase in. But for right now, most people collecting, it is age 67. Again, this is something we'll touch on later as there's conversations about pushing that even further out. One other thing with full retirement age, that's not the first time you can collect. It is still age 62 is the soonest you can collect on your own benefit. Some exceptions being a survivor benefit or a disability benefit. But age 62 stayed in there, you just receive a reduced payout for the rest of your life if you start collecting early. And the latest to collect is age 70. There is also a conversation, I've had a lot of people bring this up to me about well, I'm still working, but what if I collect Social Security now and then I invest that money? Is the more optimistic way of looking at it, though oftentimes it's just increasing your lifestyle and spending that money. Oftentimes I discourage this if someone is still working, because Social Security is built in a way that if you have earned income, in this slide here showing just shy of 25,000, then part of your check, your Social Security check, is withheld. So you don't lose that money. You do eventually get it back, but you don't get it back all at once. Whatever's withheld gets paid out over your lifetime. And so it might be only a couple dollars per check until you're age 80 that you're slowly getting back from the withholding. So oftentimes it doesn't make sense if you're still working. Now, if you retire early, or if your spouse retires early, you or your spouse could collect it earlier. It is based on the who is collecting, meaning if I was still working but my wife retired early, my wife could collect even if my income was over that $24,480. It's based on who's collecting's earned income. But again, oftentimes if someone's still working, it doesn't make sense to collect on their own benefit. This does change. So if you can see here, if the year in which you will turn 67, for example, your full retirement benefit, that limit gets increased. After your full retirement age, there is no restriction. So if you're 68 years old, you're still working, you've passed your full retirement age, you can make $1 million and they will not reduce your Social Security benefit if you start collecting at that time. One of the biggest changes to Social Security was this Social Security Fairness Act. And so for many, many years, those who were receiving government pensions or other types of pensions that maybe did not pay into Social Security, or sometimes they did, but it didn't count towards their quarterly, didn't count towards their eligibility, they were seeing a reduced benefit. And so this new act said, hey, if they've paid into these programs, they should get a full benefit. And so it repealed, talking about here, some of the reductions that had been put in place. Now, wonderful news for our clients that are seeing that big increase in their Social Security. However, right, it's more money coming out of the Social Security program. So one of the major concerns that has brought here, and the biggest thing I hear from clients is Social Security is running out, right? And that's a big headline you see. When we're doing financial planning or retirement planning clients, oftentimes they ask about what happens if I have no Social Security. So I want to take a few minutes just to address that part of things. So what this is showing here, what is going to run out is what's called the trust fund. And so for many, many years, baby boomer generation in particular, right, largest generation, paid into Social Security through their payroll taxes or FICA taxes. And the generation before them took less money out, right? The silent generation took less money out. And so because more is coming in, it built up a trust fund. And that is now switched. Right? More baby boomers are retiring, and the Generation X, the millennials, are not paying in as much as is coming out. So we're seeing that trust fund shrink. And we're seeing it shrink for different reasons. For instance, right, when you make a benefit work better for people, right, you repeal the pension limitations, then that means more money is coming out of Social Security. And so that's going to drain the trust fund faster. However, even after the trust fund runs out, which right now it's set to happen in 2032 or 2033, there will still be people like myself paying into Social Security, still paying their FICA taxes. So the estimate I see is about 75 cents of every dollar is still going to be paid out to Social Security recipients, even if nothing is fixed. Right? The worst case scenario is every dollar that's being paid in payroll taxes goes right back out the door. There are also a few fixes, as I said earlier. One of them would be right now, if you make over $184,000, then your next dollars are no longer taxed for Social Security. Right? You make $1 million. As far as Social Security is concerned, you make 184. If you've ever looked at your W-2 and you're one of the fortunate Americans making more, then you'll see that your W-2, you'll have two different numbers in the boxes because the Social Security amount was capped. There's another portion, right? There's for the Medicare side of things. That cap was removed. If you make $1 million, then you pay tax on the whole million. And you'll see that line item also in your W-2. So there's an argument to be made to say, well, if we remove that cap and every dollar you make, you pay Social Security on, that would nearly fully fund the deficit, right? That 25 cents that we're missing from the current FICA taxes versus current Social Security payments. And so again, that alone would nearly fully fund the gap. And there's a precedent for it because we've already done it for the other part of your FICA taxes. There's also an argument to be said, well, wait a minute, the people paying more taxes are not going to see an increase in their benefit because your Social Security benefit, there's a maximum. So it'll be interesting to see what Congress decides there. The other change, again, it was age 65 was a full retirement age. Then it went to age 67 over about 20 years. And now the conversation saying people are living longer, people are working longer. What if we extend that to age 70? Right? So there's an argument being made to say we're going to incentivize people to wait to collect until 70. That is also an option, right? And there's something where, again, it's just looking at statistics on how long people are living, how long they're working, and trying to push people to wait longer to collect their Social Security benefit. So those are just two of the options. There's been other ones adjusting what payment, what are the benefits that are paid out. What the cost of living we talked about earlier has already been tweaked, if you will. So it may not keep up with inflation going forward. So these are things where right now Congress doesn't want to touch this. Nobody wants to go out there and say we're either raising taxes or we're cutting Social Security benefits. However, at some point, there becomes a political incentive to have the two generations, the millennials who are paying in and the Gen X that are paying in and the baby boomers that are taking the funds out. Those are big voting blocks. And at some point, they're going to want to see a fix and know what that's going to be. So these are some of the things that could happen. There's other conversations around, well, your Social Security won't be taxable anymore. This is not exactly how it happened. So many of you who've recently filed your taxes, April 15th being the tax deadline here, would have found that there for retirees, right, there is an additional $6,000 per person standard deduction you're allowed to use. The idea being that would offset a lot of the taxes that the average American is paying for Social Security. So if you are a high-income earner, even in retirement, you're going to find that you may have been phased out of that benefit altogether, or if you did receive it, it did not cover your full Social Security tax. They were using what is the average American paying in taxes and then using the $6,000 deduction to reduce that. So just a few differences and things that have changed in Social Security. When we do our plans, I do still assume that Social Security will be there. Unfortunately, it is the lifeblood of most Americans' retirement. And so it is something that could not just be removed. However, when we do our planning process, we also assume some conservative things there, saying that it's not going to be the same benefit it is today. So when we're projecting further out, if there are fixes, and as I said, I think there will be, if our clients are impacted, that's where we put in their financial plan. So one other big thing I always like to talk about with Social Security, there's been a lot more education around it, which is wonderful. I'm having conversations with a lot of people, including my in-laws that have seen videos on social media that talk about when you should take your benefit or not. I always caution people about just taking these at face value because everyone is so different when it comes to Social Security. Your benefit can be impacted by if you're married now or if you've been previously married, if it was a divorce, were you married for 10 years, have you been remarried, if there was unfortunately a loss and you're a widow or widower, it can have an impact on your survivor benefit versus your own benefit, your family health. If maybe you've never been married, you've always been single, if you have young kids, there's a lot of things. What has your income been your whole life? First, if you're married, your spouse's. There's many, many factors that impact when you should turn on your Social Security. So I always encourage people, get as educated as you can about it, but it is an irrevocable decision, and they've done away with, there used to be the benefit to pay it back and change your mind. That has been significantly reduced. So it is effectively an irrevocable decision. So I always encourage people, ask a professional, run your own numbers, and go to ssa.gov, socialsecurityadministration.gov, get your benefit, make sure it looks right, and then we can make a decision to decide when should you turn that on that's appropriate for you and your exact situation. So if you have any questions, I don't want to run this any longer here. please feel free to reach out to our office. And if you have friends that may have questions about these things, please feel free to share this video with them. With that, say thank you very much.